What's going on, friends? Welcome to another episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast, a show that dives deep into the early stages and formation of your favorite professional wrestlers, bringing out their struggles, their fears, and most importantly, their most interesting stories. I'm your host, the King of Chaos, Logan Black. Thank you so much for checking us out on whatever platform you enjoy your podcasts on. We are all about showing love here, so if you dig what you hear or just feel like being awesome, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend, leave a review, share, retweet, do whatever you can to help us get the word out on the show. Before we get to this really awesome interview with Chris Horrorshow this week, we gotta pay the bills, don't we all? Let's get right to it. If you'd like to help support me or the show with your wallet, you can go ahead and do that in one of two ways. The first being my Pro Wrestling Tees store. That would be prowrestlingtees.com/King of Chaos NYC, where you can get a whole bunch of exclusive shirts that I will never ever have at my merch table. You could only ever get them on that site. Additionally, if you do want to grab the shirts that I've got at my merch table, you can do that at my Big Cartel store. That would be kingofchaosnyc.bigcartel.com. Also, if you're looking to get your fix, if you're itching to check out all different types of independent wrestling, including yours truly, all over the place, you can only get it one place, and that is IWTV. If you go ahead and sign up today, you'll get your first 5 days free with the promo code Logan Black. That's one word, all caps. But as I say every single week, your listens, your retweets, your comments, anything that you do to help me out with this show is greatly appreciated. But now let's talk about this week's guest, the former Lucas Calhoun, as many of you might have known him, now going by Chris Horrorshow, reverting back to his roots. I met Chris, many years ago. I think it was NWA Fusion in Virginia. We were chilling in a locker room, and I think he noticed my straight edge tattoo. As you know, I am straight edge, as is he. So we started chatting about that, and that's kind of the weird thing about subcultures. You know, we talk about on the show all the time about how, you know, wrestling, and if you're a wrestling fan and you see another wrestling fan, boom, there's an instant connection right there, and you can just chat it up with anybody and be friendly. The same goes for like punks or hardcore kids, and especially straight edge kids, because we are a much rarer breed. So immediately him and I were chill, and that was that. And then randomly we were put in a match against each other a couple of years after that at Beyond Wrestling. It's a match that's pretty forgettable. It was not great, if I may say so. But we always remained super chill, and there is that connection. Myself, Jeremy Leary, who is certainly not straight edge, and Chris, just all together, just weird, interesting, fun triangle of friendship. Every time I catch up with Chris at a show, we're usually chatting about music or just some other forms of nonsense, punching Nazis, you know, all the normal stuff. But this time it was awesome to genuinely sit down with the guy and just pick his brain on him breaking in, the area in which he broke in, and all the weird, interesting things that was year one for him. So let's hop right into that interview. Chris Horrorshow on the Year One Wrestling Podcast. We are here with Chris Horrorshow, formerly known as Lucas Calhoun. Dude, how are you doing? We were chatting for almost 10 minutes prior to this intro, and it's just great to catch up with you. I feel like that theory of wrestling where it's like, oh, you know, you don't see people for months, and then you do see them, and it's like no time has passed. It's literally like every time that you and I chat, it's the same deal.
That's right. When was the last time that we actually saw each other? Was that a primetime show? Like,
I think it was. But I don't remember speaking to you for that long there, because I don't know why. I don't know. I think it was just walking around like crazy.
Yeah, I remember that show being like for some reason, like very scattered, and I don't like. I mean, just personally, like not the show itself, like, but personally feeling like very like kind of like scattered and like hectic for some reason. I'm not terribly sure why, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm all right. It's a weird time. There's a lot of weirdness going on. I think by and large, I hope I'm weathering it relatively well. So yeah, I don't know. It's things are things. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're weathering it pretty well. Let's just hop right into it off the bat. What are your earliest memories of professional wrestling?
Oh man. So I've got two really kind of like my early memories are really, really bad from when I was younger, so I apologize for this. But I remember my dad taking me to go see a show. Maybe it was WCW. I forget exactly. At the Norfolk Scope when I was a kid. This had to probably be in like 88, 89, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I remember just being super thrilled as to like just seeing like live wrestling at the Scope. God, I want to say, and I may be completely wrong in this, but I want to say that like we saw, I want to say we saw like, was Blackjack Mulligan there? Is that right? Like I feel like is that, or maybe I feel like he was somewhere in the mix, but like I don't remember. I literally remember nothing about the actual show itself. Like I could not tell you a single match, a single performer outside of this vague feeling that I had that Blackjack Mulligan was there, which I may very well be making up. I don't know. But like I can't tell you a single thing. All I remember is the feeling of being there and like how excited I was and how stoked I was to see this show, and like just how cool I thought everything was. And then I have another like really kind of like scattered memory later of, at the time we would have to call, we'd have to call through our like cable box and like order the pay-per-views. And for whatever reason that night, the cable company was like the feed was messing up, or like our cable box was messing up or something like that. So we ordered the pay-per-view. And I remember there was some match or another where Demolition was, I think, going after like WWF tag team belts, and I'm sitting down to like watch this. Like we tuned in like kind of during the beginning, like early part of this match, and the picture on the TV, I mean, it was all static on the TV, but you could still hear like the sound, like the commentary and ring noise, the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just sitting there kind of like listening to it, like it's like listening to wrestling on the radio. And my dad obviously called back to the cable company, came back and was just like, listen, they can either like turn the thing off and like we'll kind of watch it at a different time, or like if they have a replay or something like that, or like we can continue watching it just like this, but the picture's never going to come in. And I was just like, nope, we're going to listen. I will sit here and I will just listen and imagine the pro wrestling that's happening.
That's some real fucking fandom right there, man.
Bro, I was in it, son. Like, like I remember very clearly like the tears streaming down my face when like Earthquake squashed Damien, right? Like, I mean, like I remember like I was messed up at school like the next day. Like I was like that's how much that affected. Like I was in it when I was a kid, man. Like you could have told me at all that wrestling wasn't real. And I would not have believed you.
Dude, it's funny because I talk to so many people, like just friends like outside of the wrestling bubble, because people in the bubble, we all get it. Like we were all that like super fan who like, was just so obsessed and was weird in school because we talk about it and everybody would look at us funny. Depending on your era, when I talk to people who are younger, like in the Attitude Era, and they're like, yeah, in first grade in 1999, I was to everyone like Stone Cold, and I'm like, yeah, y'all are bandwagoners, motherfuckers.
Right.
No, like literally anything wrestling was like you were going to attach yourself to. I'll never forget my best friend who was also like obsessed with wrestling. He had an older sister who watched soap operas, and she watched a show, and I was convinced, and I was like, I gotta be home to see this. The show was The Young and the Wrestling in my head. Young and the Restless, right?
Yeah.
But this is again, I was that fucking obsessed, and I get it. Like we're all in that shit, where if there's wrestling on TV or there's wrestling somewhere, we have to be a part of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I was all in all the time.
Do you have any kind of background in athletics or wrestling?
Not until I was like out of high school. Like all through like my school, like my standard public school years, like I was just a nerd, man. Like I was just like this goofy, chubby nerd. And now I'm like this goofy, chubby nerd that like actually has an idea of how his body moves through space. So that's really the only difference now. But like, Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty much like it's wild because I had zero interest in sports when I was younger. Like I played a little t-ball as a kid, hated that because I hate team sports. Um, I went out for I actually joined I joined the wrestling team in high school and made it through like I mean I probably a dozen practices or maybe like something along those lines before before I got really confused as to why we were just doing these like random holds and like trying to like twist people around. And I'm like, why are we like? But if your guy's in this position, can he not just like kick you in your head? And my coach, the coach just looks at me and goes, "Yeah, we don't do that, man." All right, well, I'm out. Like,
this is the story with literally everybody.
Yeah,
like everyone
yeah.
has the same story. It's like, yeah, I joined wrestling because, I was a fan. I wanted to get into it. And then like, oh, we're not doing Hurricane Ranas. We're not doing suplex and power bombs.
Yeah, right.
Where are we bouncing off the ropes? Nah, fuck this. Like that's it. Everyone has the same story. And it really, again, it speaks to that fandom of like how we are just so all in on pro wrestling.
So mine is weird too because like I think that some of that was tied to like some of my thought of like, hey, why are we not just kicking this guy while he's trying to grapple us? Was tied to like a weird interest in like martial arts that I have, right? So because almost as soon as I got out of high school, and I was up in college here in Richmond. I found a dude around the corner from my apartment who had there was a place around the corner and he was teaching Hungar, Tiger Crane style kung fu.
Oh,
And yeah, no, and literally I was on board. Like I had gone earlier and found there's a guy locally who was teaching Wing Chun kung fu, and I did that for a little while. Wasn't a big fan, but when I saw this place around the corner and went and talked to who's this guy who's now or was my Sifu, he it was like I'm 100% on board. Like I went from almost zero athletics to I'm in this place training like 4 or 5 days a week. Like I started getting interested in lifting outside of doing kung fu, and that really just after that it was just all kind of it just all kind of kicked in from there. Like it's so incredibly strange to me that was such a weird binary switch because honestly it was I would get in high school, man, it was I would get made fun of all the time for just chilling and reading D&D books at lunch. I would talk to the other nerds about comics. I would come up with any possible excuse that I could to not change out for gym or if I did to not try. But now it's now I can't imagine my life without it. It's so bizarre.
It's interesting how us nerds kind of can obsess over things like comics and D&D or video games and then immediately switch gears with passions and be like, yeah, all that stuff is still cool, but I really like to nerd out about lifting shit or doing kung fu and Wing Chun and all that stuff. It's super interesting how that's a common thread amongst nerds, at least within my circle of nerddom.
It's all nerdery, man. Everything. I was talking to a friend of mine. She's a personal trainer and a nutrition coach. And she really does deep dives into this stuff. And we were sitting around talking about it. And I was like, no, man. Listen, all I do is I sit here and I crunch numbers. Be it I'm going through and kind of figuring out my calories, my macros, whatever. Or when I'm writing out my programming and I'm doing percentage of working max, which is a percentage of my 1 rep max. And I'm charting this progress and kind of aiming for these very specific goals and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all nerdery. That's all. I mean, it's all it is. I'm just geeking out over lifting stuff or learning a better way to punch people than than when I turn around and nerd out over I'm going to paint this cool little Space Marine miniature. It's just all nerdery, just different stripes.
So let's jump into where you got your start training. What can you remember from going in there, your first experiences in the ring, all that stuff?
Oh, it was bad.
This is stuff I love to hear. I need you to understand that though. Like as much as I love talking to people like Cheeseburger who like came through the Ring of Honor system, or like, other people who were like, yeah, it was like a brilliant learning experience.
Right.
I love the trash stories too.
Oh man, it's like okay, so we started right like my entire as like a lot of people do, like my entire wrestling career started backyard wrestling, right? We were literally we were hanging out, we were having parties, and like while we're having these parties, we were like, oh, we're just gonna do some some fake wrestling, because like most of the people who I started with like in the backyard stuff were like my kung fu brothers, so we all knew how to fall, we all liked wrestling, like we kind of just took it from there. And eventually, like our backyard wrestling shows got so large that we caught the attention of the Virginia Commission, like, and the commission, the DPOR called me at one point to tell me like, hey, listen, you can't be doing this, like these shows anymore, or else if they stay the way they're going, like you can't do these shows because like we're going to come down on you and we can hand you like I forget what they said, like a $2,500 fine per individual per infraction, right? Which like, I mean, when you're in college, right? Like that's a crazy amount of money. That's an insane amount of money. Yeah. So, so after talking with them and figuring out like the only real way to go forward, if we wanted to continue wrestling, is to, go get trained, go get our licensing and all that kind of good stuff. Like we found there's one school in the area. There's a place out in Ashland, which is about 30 minutes north of Richmond, I guess. It was the Global Wrestling Alliance Training Center, run by two people that I don't think anybody's ever really heard of, Kylie McLean and Dragon Frost. Kylie McLean, her big claim to fame was, I don't know if you remember, man, God, what was this, a decade ago, 15 years, something like that? Like they had a Rosie O'Donnell versus Donald Trump match on Raw.
Of course I remember that. Ace Steel played Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Kylie McLean was Rosie O'Donnell in that match.
Oh, man. Dude, I legitimately, and it's the sad part, I think, about, I guess, just the state of my brain, but also just like how, again, I love trash. That segment is so vivid in my brain, where she eats Fudgy the Whale and it gets thrown in her face. Yep. And Ace Steel is making all these like obscure wrestling references in the ring that if you listen clear enough, you could, like, he's just trying to pop everybody. I remember this like it was yesterday, and it's crazy because it was such a garbage segment.
It's so terrible, wasn't it? But God, it was so. Again, it was right. It's one of those things like so terrible that it's like, oh, man, God, I love it. It's great. But yeah, no, I mean, it was like this whole area. I mean, literally up until probably man, I'd say it's only starting to loosen up kind of like now, maybe within the past couple of years, right? Like this whole area has been held tightly in the grip of like 1970s mid-Atlantic style wrestling.
Oof.
Yeah, right, exactly. So much of what we went in wanting to do, and like the wrestling that we were watching, the stuff that we were interested in, was just not even on the menu. Like this was just not even like, it's not even a thought. Like I remember they had like, so two things really stick out to me. Number one, we still went through chop school, right? And right. It just just constant like just a round of like beating like shitty chops until like trying to break people down, and then them getting really mad because my kung fu brother Warren and we were in this, and we're like watching everybody before us, and we're like, man, this sucks, but you know what, like we hit each other a lot harder than this when we go down and train. We were training kung fu. We hit each other a lot harder than this, like when we're training. So cool. And like just from the first shot, both of us like back to back from the first shot, just no sold all of the chops that we got, just straight up like stone faced. And it made. I could imagine
how that like drove people insane.
Oh, it was wild. Like we were in there, the two of us were in there longer than everybody else. I mean, like probably put together, because they were just trying and trying and trying, like all the real shitty ways to, like, they're spreading their fingers real wide to try to like bust blood vessels and bust us open. They're cupping their hand to try to make it like extra hard. They switched to doing like overhand chops. Like they even hit us with some of the unintentional, but they hit us with a bunch of those like those Japanese style where it's more forearm than it is like hand, right? Like they hit us with a bunch of those, and we're just kind of like, all right, man, cool, all right, and like just kind of carried on about our night. And another time we had, so they had a day where they called it trainee, was a trainee pick day. Right. And they were like, when you come in, like, just have like a couple of things that you maybe want, like that you maybe saw, that you maybe want to work on, you maybe want to try out, like we can do it kind of safely in here, whatever. And Warren comes in and he's just like, yeah, I want to learn how to do a tiger driver. And like, and Kylie and Drake can just kind of look at each other confused for a second. They're like, all right, well, I guess we can figure it out. We're just like, oh. So I'm not going to figure none of this out. I'm going to go sit down outside of the ring and watch you guys spike people on their heads. Yeah, no, it was not like it was not a really like it was not a very advanced learning in professional wrestling. It's really super basic stuff. And I'm actually really jealous sometimes of people who are who are able to go to like the Creative Pro School or Cheeseburger School or like a Ring of Honor dojo, things like that, like places that are like really like have really, really talented, like good, like trainers that have done a lot. Because we we kind of muddled our way through. And I mean, if I'm being frank, like I got a solid base for stuff there. And then there was a long period of time where like post that school, it was like a very long period of time of like, going and showing up places, like going up showing to shows. And obviously like we're there to set up and, help whatever in the beginning, like, do whatever's needed. And our reward for this was being put into a match with a vet that is literally, it was literally just a squash. And the conversation goes, you sit down and you go, hello, sir, my name is so-and-so, like, what would you like to do? Like, what can I do? And every single time it was the same thing. My finish is X. Listen to me. I'll see you out there, kid. And that was it, right? Like, and that's all you got for for forever, right? It's just, it's just constant. Like, it was just constant, the same kind of like, the same kind of stuff over there. You're having pretty much the same match, like, super easy. Like if you're, if you're lucky and you got a good dude, like he'll give you a hope spot or two. If you're extra lucky and you got a really good guy, like he will sit down with you after the match and he will talk about the reasons that he did things and like, what he did and like what kind of could have been improved or so on and so forth. If you weren't lucky, you got a dude who just beat the shit out of you for a solid couple minutes. And if you were extra unlucky, you got a dude who beat the shit out of you for a solid couple minutes and then went to the back and buried you directly to your face and buried you loudly to anybody who would listen.
Yeah, you know what? I'm really glad that fucking generation is starting to really die out. Because that shit is just straight. And again, like, I came up in the same exact shit. Dude, like, a lot of the stuff that you're saying is resonating like crazy with me because Gleason's was the same way. Like, you'd expect a WWE Hall of Famer school to be, like, legit, and it's fucking not. It's doo-doo, and it's still to this day kind of the fucking same, where it's just a lot of the blind leading the blind, and, like, everybody just... It's a lot of that just, this is the way to do things, and if you don't do things this way, then you're doing it wrong. Right. And that kind of shit is, to me, that's insane because, like, I don't know, man. At least in my lifetime, I've never watched anybody and been drawn to anybody who does things by the book. Like, by the book guys or the ones who were great, but at the end of the day, like, are they going to be remembered like in Austin who, flipped off his boss? Like, You know what I mean? Like in the great annals of wrestling, like who was like, yeah, we need somebody to flip off my boss, or
Right. It's weird because like I'm kind of of two minds about this, right? Like I also am glad that whole crew is like that whole generation is like just finding its way out the door, right? Like I'm very excited, and like I think that leaves a lot of really good like open available opportunity for like some really crazy good, innovative, interesting pro wrestling to happen here in the future. But at the same time, like I still think like a little bit of that, like not the super abusive part, but I still think a little bit of that like is like helpful to young kids. Like I think that like if you get in there, right, like if you have a period of time where like you're going and like, you know, paying your dues is kind of a bullshit phrase, but like, you know, like kind of paying your dues without the abusive aspect, right? Like, you know, if you're going in there and you're putting in the reps and you're like learning from these guys, like, and you're able to find guys that like can go out there and just be like, look, we're going to have like, you know, the guys that have like been around doing it for a while, like they're going to go out there and we're going to have a match where maybe we don't like spell everything out step for step, move for move. And like, you know, you've got to do a little bit of that, like listening, like kind of, and responding to the crowd. And then you're able to get to the back and like have it really broken down for you in terms of like, hey, like, you know, this is what's going on. Like, this is what we did. This is why, so on and so forth. Like, you're able to ask questions like that. I think, honestly, I think that goes really far, you know, as opposed to like if you're constantly getting booked places where like you go and like maybe you know the guy, you wrestled, like, you know, wrestled a whole bunch of times, and you're able to like sit there and talk about every step, every move, every eye blink in the match, which, you know, it's not like I'm not trying to talk shit on that, because I will do that for sure myself, but like, you know, I think there's a lot more learning that can go on, and a lot more real deeper understanding of like what professional wrestling can be, if you get that period of time of like learning and like not really being able to like say like not really being able to be in your comfort zone, you know what I mean? Like right off the bat, like one of the best times one of the best learning experiences I ever had. I posted about this on Twitter the other day. Like I wrestled Kamala once.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Oh, it was phenomenal. Like I cannot like it is to this day the easiest and still like most informative match I have ever had. Like, you know, we go back. It's me and another guy, and we go back and we sit down and we talk, and we're like, you know, the same kind of deal, right? Like, still relatively young kid at this point in time, so I'm like, hello, sir. You know, my name's Chris. Like, you know, we're going to be working together tonight, and you know, anything that you would like, anything I can do, like, please, like, you know, let me know, like, what would you like to do? And, you know, he's sitting back there, God bless him, he's sitting back there in like a Cosby sweater, just the chillest dude. And he's just like, he looks at me and he looks at the other dude, and he just kind of like starts nodding his head, and he's like, all right, fellas, yeah, we're gonna have a good time, man. We'll just, you know, nothing real special. We'll just go out there and listen. All right, yes, sir, absolutely. If you need anything, like, I'll be right over here. Like, I'll come check in again. And it really was. I mean, it was like I've been in the ring with like names, like older guys that have just really like absolutely gone like super hard in the paint, like just wrecked me up, just totally like just lit me up, just beat the hell out of me. And Kamala barely touched me.
It's like you get these experiences, and I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying when it comes to like really learning how to work with that kind of stuff, because when you get guys in there, like, it's very easy, and I see a lot of guys, especially local guys, who like they're out there every weekend and they're having these great matches, and I mean, there's no denying these kids are, you know, better than I, certainly way better than I was at that point.
Sure, yeah. Like,
but they're also working against like other people who are young and hungry, and like, yeah, I could get dropped on my head 40 times because I've only been working for a year. And they have these, I mean, it's dope. But like at the end of the day, is that kid going to be able to get in there with like, you know, maybe he busted up his knee on Friday, but he's got Saturday, Sunday to work. Like these are the things that really make the difference. Like I bring up to, you know, anyone willing to listen where like my first night in England, because when I did England, it was 6 days straight with 2 matches a night. Mm-hmm. In my first match in England, first night, I got dumped on my head and I tore a tendon in my back.
Oh,
right. I'm not hitting the fucking hospital in my first tour of England. Mm-hmm. So I just switched up the way that I worked every night, and it was such a fucking incredible learning experience. And the same goes when you work guys like Kamala or Hacksaw Jim Duggan, mm-hmm. or like, you know, any of these old timers, like, you know, all the people popping into my head are all Northeast guys. So, but like, like that's the thing. Like, you really learn to work and get the most out, and like really take your time with stuff. Like, man, Kamala's not gonna let you rush. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, for sure is not. And like, I've got a really funny thing about this Kamala match too. Like, but you know, and then after the fact too, like he's not only not gonna let you rush, like you're working at his pace, which is super brilliant. Like he's not here to like, you know, he's not here to blow anybody up, right? We're not doing 15 head drops. Like I don't have to get Canadianed off the top through a table for a finish. It literally was like a double splash, and then he pinned us in the wrong direction and had to roll us over and pin, like, right, like this is it. And then he shit canned us, like threw us out of the ring, like whatever. But like, but then sitting down after the match with him and talking to him and being like, hey, so like how did you get to this point? Like what is, like how is this so, like how did you like kind of figure out this formula and like what works and why is this so easy? Because, you know, literally, like I'm out here, same deal, right? Like I'm out here still trying to prove myself, and I'm killing myself in some of these matches. And like, and he was great. Like he was super kind to sit there and like and talk and like, you know, kind of explain like really like what, you know, to him, like how pro wrestling actually was and like what it is, you know, and that really like kind of opened my eyes up a lot to be like, man, I don't need to go out here and just like, I think at the time I was like really like super strong style inspired dummy. Like, so like, I don't need to go out here and like let people hit me really hard or like, you know, like do all this crazy stuff for like a mediocre reaction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that kind of learning, man, like to for some of these kids, like I think would be super useful. There's been some discussion that I've had recently with you know, with people about like how training is kind of done for some folks that we like, or some people that we know, and like there's some weird, like I found some kind of weird like discrepancies and like you know, not really doing a lot of like calling stuff in the ring, or like not really working like I was just talking with somebody about like I was talking with another buddy about some real basic like, you know, strike and sell drills that like I don't think are really, you know, in certain schools that I'm familiar with, like are not very popular and like not very like widely used, as opposed to like spending a lot of time setting up very particular specific spots. And I think, you know, and I think having that ability in your back pocket just to like be able to be like, oh no, I can totally, you know, I can do this as well, is probably go a long way.
To me, that's one of the more important things to kind of get early on. Like it's, and again, like I'm not anybody to like specifically say this is right or wrong. Like there is no, the wrong way is what gets people hurt. The right way is everything else. However you find success, however you make money, that's the right way. So, you know, it is what it is. But I'm always, if I'm going to be training somebody, my goal is to have them be able to have all their basics set and have them be able to call like a decent match, like on the fly. Once you've done that, then to me, you can go out there and do whatever it is that you want to do and go crazy and forget all of those things. There's a Pablo Picasso quote that like, it just, in my nerdiness of kind of, you know, pulling all of this stuff together. It's learn the rules like a pro so you could break them like an artist.
Yeah,
which
right.
literally the way that I look at wrestling. That's my psychology behind it.
Yeah, no, it's everything, right? Like you have to know the rules of what you're doing. Like you have to have those like down pat, really solid before you can really start thinking about breaking them. Because then you understand like the ways in which you're breaking them and the reasons that you're breaking them, and how to like break them in the right way. Like this is like wrestling is in this whole like brave new world period right now, which is wild because like everybody's like there's super unexpected successes. Like I mean, who like, and I love him. I think he's like probably one of the most talented wrestlers I've ever met. But like, who would have thought 3 years ago that Orange Cassidy is going to be like the most popular dude, like probably one of the most popular dudes in all of professional wrestling. Like as that character, right? Like this is wild to think about. Like and again, like he's a massively like a insanely talented pro wrestler, like right? Like, but this as a concept, like if you think about this, like I mean, hell, like go back to the early '90s and think about Orange Cassidy as a character, right? Like, right. This is not even a thing. Like, and there's so much of that goes on now. Like, just, characters and not even characters, but like the physical ways that people work, like being so far out of the box, like from, I guess what you and I like really kind of like grew up steeped in, like, and that, I think that to me is just super, super exciting. I heard a really interesting interview with Jimmy Jacobs a couple years ago. And one of the things that he said that stuck with me is that like pro wrestling is like this great big blank canvas that we can use to create on. And so far, up until this point in time, we've only been painting in like one small corner of it. We haven't really like
That's
gotten
brilliant.
And yeah, no, I mean like Jimmy Jacobs, like Jimmy Jacobs is one of these dudes that like, and there's like a handful of these guys like Jacobs, Kingston, that understand pro wrestling on like just a wildly different level than I think anybody else that like we just come into contact with. You know what I mean? Like they think about pro wrestling. Like if you think like fans think about pro wrestling on one level, guys like us who have been wrestling a while, like, or trained wrestlers, like we think about pro wrestling in one particular level. Like Jimmy Jacobs, Eddie Kingston, guys like these, like they have this concept of pro wrestling, like and what it can be and how to use it. Like that just, it's like, for me, it's like the way they think is like an ant contemplating a tire. I just don't get it. But like it's super brilliant. Yeah, it's a really exciting time right now.
I could not agree with you more, and I'm also, always happy to hear more people that are not looking to hear from people that are not looking to just paint in that one corner and are kind of thinking outside the box and are ready to give a massive fuck you to that old guard that is literally just focused on that corner of paint. But let's stick with what we're going with here and kind of dial it back to your first year. What were your goals when you first broke in?
Honestly, like my goals then remain the same as my goals right now. I really just wanted to make professional wrestling like that I wanted to make with my friends. Like, that's literally it. That's all I wanted. I learned and I trained and got my my Virginia wrestling license and so on and so forth as a means to continue doing like the wrestling shows that we wanted to put on. Now along the way, like obviously like it obviously like became very obvious to me that like I cannot continue just wrestling the same people in the same style like that we've been doing if I want to get better at this and I actually want to like start making wrestling that is quality and not just like random garbage fights. So like then after that it just like kind of started like going and doing more just to kind of like learn and continue going, and that's pretty much it, man. I just wanted to like kind of learn and get better and like it as a means to making like the wrestling that I wanted to make better,
who else was around at the time that was helping you out with either with training, or who else was in that class that like you felt a certain bond with?
There's a lot of guys that like, when we went through it, like like we kind of stayed in the same little group. There's a guy, he was, at the time, he was the Kamikaze Kid here. He went out to OVW and he was Paradise for a good while. Now he was working at like Impact as a producer, and I think now he's with WWE as like, or director of new media or something like that. He's a really brilliant, I mean, just a fucking brilliant dude. James Long, we were buddies in wrestling for a super long time. I don't know if you know Chris Silvio.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Chris Silvio was one of the guys that was in that same, went to the same training school, and he was in Richmond Lucha with me for a long time. Another super talented dude. And that basically like this core little group of like Richmond Lucha dudes were largely who I was kind of around at that time. Not as many, like kind of varying levels of wrestling related hunger, you know what I mean? Like some guys are content to just kind of like come in and do, the show every month or every couple months, what have you, and that's totally fine. And then there's guys that wanted to be on the road every weekend and go do stuff, and like so we went, we were doing a lot of that. Those guys, like some of the outside guys, I think I ran into early on, like he's Sean Denny now. He was Sean Lee back then. He was a guy that like, weirdly came up through the same training school as like Sanjay Dutt and Mickey James. But also had like kind of an eye for like how wrestling was going to change in the future. So he was really good about like putting a word in for me and kind of vouching for me early on. Like he really didn't have to, to kind of get me some work on some of these other shows that would like, if I'd have just kind of come to them with my wrestling resume and my little highlight reel tape, probably would have like turned their nose up at me because weird ass tattooed kid. I think he was probably like locally was probably one of the most instrumental guys in like really helping me branch out to other places. Because he was really heavy. Like at the time he was like, super like busy in kind of the Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina area, and so I would like, get in and travel to a bunch of those places as well, thanks to him.
That's pretty dope considering that, like, early on it's super hard to kind of get your foot in the door places. And then also, like, you saying, like, your school was very much like a very basic spot. So at least there was, people there you surrounded yourself with that were at least able to kind of like aid you in all the other stuff that like very basic wrestling schools don't teach you, like, getting your name out there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your first gimmick, or did you even have a first gimmick?
I did. My it's funny how like how what I thought about it now and then versus what I think about it now. So my first gimmick, this may shock you to find out that I'm a huge Misfits fan, right?
No way, man. Would never have guessed it.
Right. So my first gimmick was actually the Horrorshow. And it was full on, like I had cut up jean shorts and a hoodie that I had painted like a rib cage on. It was like sleeveless hoodie that I painted a rib cage on. I had like a mask, a skull mask that I had High Spots make me, like just straight up like giant black patent leather wrestling boots. I came to the ring with like a cut off noose tied around my neck and swinging a chainsaw around that I would get a chainsaw and get somebody to take the blade off of it. So I just had like the worry, like the loud chainsaw noise, and nobody's paying too terribly much attention to it. So I'm not going to actually like, right. It was all that, like that was my first gimmick was the Horrorshow. and it lasted for a long time. But there was no, like, when I think about it, right, there were no real defining characteristics to it. You know what I mean? Like, I wore a skull mask and like all this kind of like I did this Misfits inspired like horror look. But when I got in the ring, I was just like I just did like random indie stuff that I thought was neat. You know?
That makes sense for, an early on wrestling gimmick where it's
Right.
like, I've got this idea, I've got this gear, but I'm going to go in the ring and just do cool shit.
Yeah, that was literally it. Like, I'm just going to go do some of the stuff I think is cool. All right, cool. Here we go.
Let's talk about your first match.
God, do we have to?
Absolutely. Because that reaction alone makes me want to hear more and more and more about it.
Oh God. I'm gonna have to actually like think. I might actually have to think about this because again, my memory is really, 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 really bad. I can't really remember if it was like. I remember going to North Carolina because North Carolina, like compared to Virginia, is like the Wild West, right? There's no licensing needed. There's no training required. So like anybody who has a ring and a space that the ring will fit can just have themselves a wrestling show.
Brilliant.
It's great. And like, I mean, I'll tell you, like probably 7 times out of 10 when I would go to some of these North Carolina shows, the card was not put together until like everybody was there and they were like, all right, well, here's who we got. So let's do some wrestles. No, my first match was literally like, it was literally, I mean, just like I described before. I forget. I honestly, do not even remember who it was I wrestled. I remember stowing along in this car to North Carolina and being like super nervous. And like, I really was hoping that I didn't fuck it up. And I get there and they tell me, all right, we're going to put you with whoever this person, God, I don't remember. I feel really bad about this. We'll put you with whoever the guy is. We had like literally that. I'm sure we had literally that exact same conversation of coupled with I remember specifically coupled with a like, all right, well, how long have you been working? And me going, I'm just out of training and just getting a little. All right. Fuck. I remember that exchange very specifically, and then it was to my recollection, it was the most basic match. I don't believe I got anything in. I am like 90% positive that the match was sub 3 minutes. And I'm pretty sure that it was just like, beat down, like, just a lot of listening to this guy being like, grabbing me and be like, all right, watch the clothesline, like, all right, here we go, backdrop, arm drag, like, fucking whatever. And yeah, I mean that was it. It was completely non-memorable. I don't remember like. I don't really recall that I blew anything, but I don't really think that there was anything like, I don't think there was anything to blow.
Just had the match and it was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, pretty much. It was just
some wrestling.
Yeah, it was just like, this guy like was, I mean, he was just not real stoked to be in there, I guess, with me. But luckily it was not like a, all right, well, time to fuck this kid up because he's new. I think you just kind of like, honestly, I think if I'm thinking about it hard enough, I think he probably like now in terms that I understand, like, I think he probably just kind of like mailed it in, got his envelope and was like, all right, well, whatever.
And North Carolina is a couple of hours from you, is it not? Or is that like a super quick ride?
It was, it wasn't too terribly bad. I mean, it was probably 2 hours or so.
Okay, so that would constitute your first wrestling road trip.
Yeah. I mean, like at the time there was very, very little like outside of the GWA shows and like some, I think NWA Virginia didn't really pick up until shortly after I was out of training, but like outside of like NWA Virginia and like some of the GWA shows, there wasn't really a lot going on in Richmond. There was some stuff happening like in kind of Hampton Roads area. I didn't really get on those shows until later, once I, kind of got my licensing all squared away and so on and so forth. But yeah, like, so a lot of it in the early goings was just going to North Carolina because it was, it was easy and there was no barrier to entry,
So let's switch gears just for a moment. Let's say you can get yourself in a time machine and go back to the horror show on his first day. What advice would you right now have for yourself on your first day?
I'll tell you right now, like the advice that I would have for myself is probably to take it seriously sooner than I did. I spent a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, just kind of like aimlessly fucking around, like because my interest wasn't doing like Richmond Lucha shows, like shows that and like making this kind of like punk rock wrestling mashup thing that we were doing, but like not thinking too terribly far outside of that goal. You know what I mean? Like it took me to 2014 to get to Chikara. And then after that, like, it's taken me longer at this point, I mean, 6 years later, to like still have gotten out to more places and, like made connections and like figured out like kind of how the wrestling world works, in terms of like branching out places and getting more bookings and so on and so forth. And I'm just so like, at this part, I'm so far behind the curve where I think that I really could be, had I spent like a lot of that time kind of in the middle of my career, like really taking it seriously and trying to like do what I'm doing now, or what I have been doing, and like, getting out to like wider, more other places, making connections and, so on and so forth. That would probably be like number one advice that I gave myself.
Probably would be the advice that I would give to myself. As we wind down on the show, we get to my favorite question, because it's based around a theory that I have, and that theory is that the most interesting, weirdest, craziest, zaniest, most unique people you meet in professional wrestling all manage to come into your life within that first year. So, Chris Horrorshow, can you name the weirdest, oddest, most unique person that you ever came in contact with early on in your professional wrestling career?
Let me think about this. You said your theory is that it happens within that first year of professional wrestling?
It always seems like, the wrestling is full of crazies. There's no denying that. I mean, I would consider myself amongst those. I'm sure I'm the answer to somebody's question on here. However, I feel like those people all come into your life within that first year. And then after that, it starts to kind of wind down eventually. But who is the weirdest person that you feel that you've come across early on? Doesn't necessarily have to be that first year. It could be the first couple of years, but
I guess it wasn't early on. But the guy that the weirdest, kind of most out there character that I have met in professional wrestling so far, is probably Ace Montana. He almost defies description. Like you really almost have to experience Ace Montana. Like, the 3 bullet points that I love to give, well, 3 now that I love to give when talking about Ace, are the time that he made Dustin Rhodes so mad that Dustin threw one of his own flip-flops across a parking lot. Oh no, there's great. There's a whole. No, I'm gonna run down, like, this is gonna be great. My Ace Montana storytelling always. So he made Dustin Rhodes so mad, and I don't remember the exact context of it. I think they were like an NWA fan conclave or something like that. Fan fest or something. I forget exactly what it was. Something in North Carolina. I guess they had like kind of a discussion interaction. And Ace, like, if you don't know Ace, it's hard to tolerate Ace if you don't know him. For a long time, I'm as a person, I'm kind of like I innately keep people kind of at arm's length when I first meet them. I'm not particularly like open to everybody just because of just how I am. And I also have a super weird thing about like people coming over to my house, like that I didn't invite. So at one point, my little group of friends, we came over, like we were watching, I had invited people over to come watch a pay-per-view, just like eat some pizza, dick around in my house. And I specifically did not invite Ace because at the time, like I was not Ace's biggest fan. And when I get there, one of my buddies is just like, hey, just FYI, I told Ace he could come over too. I was heated, right? Just immediately, I was like, man, what the fuck, man? Ace Montana, everybody else comes in through my front door. Ace Montana lets himself in through like the back door that goes to my kitchen. And when he comes into the living room where everybody's at, Ace Montana is dressed like fucking Hulk Hogan.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He's got fucking orange and red. He's got orange and red boas on. He's got the fucking red Hulkamania shirt. He's got a weight belt, the mustache painted on, the bandana, and sunglasses. Come in fucking yelling at everybody, like calling him brother, this, that, and the other. Does the whole deal. Plays the guitar on his boas, tears his shirt off, and I'm just like, come on in, Ace. Sit down and have some pizza, buddy. I kind of slowly stopped hating Ace at that point. That's when it was really a turning point for me. Later on, we all got together to load up a ring for a show, and we were getting together and we got together at like 9 o'clock or something like that to load this ring up, right? Which, if you're imagining just like a handful of like early to mid 20s kids at this point in time, was a pretty fucking difficult situation. But we get there, kind of blearily load this ring into our truck that we'd rented and get it going. At about 9:45, we were done. Ace comes pulling up in his truck. Ace comes pulling up in his truck, and I'm just like, Ace, what the fuck, man? Come on, everybody else was here at 9 o'clock. Why are you showing up at 9:45? I don't like. I'm just like getting really irate at him. And he stops me, and he's like, whoa, show, wait, man. I got something for you. And he reaches into his fucking little shirt pocket, and he pulls out one package of Pez candy. And you see, I in my kitchen, I had a little thing that's like held a bunch of like Pez dispensers, right, that I had collected. And he's like, here, man, I got this for you. It's for your Pez's. I was like, God. And I just immediately just stopped being mad at Ace. It was just like, oh, God bless you, man.
How do you get mad at a guy who brings you Pez?
Right, like exactly. I was just like, all right, man, you fucking smashed right through all of my anger. Let's see. Let me other good. Oh, he called. Les Thatcher gave him some critique. I think another one of these like NWA fan conclave situations or something like that. Les Thatcher happened to be wearing an orange shirt at the time. Gave him a little bit of critique and like kind of there was a little bit of back and forth. And Ace Montana finished that entire conversation by going, turning to Les Thatcher and going, oh yeah, well you look like a pumpkin, and walking off. Straight up told that he looked like a pumpkin. He's all right, Ace Montana. There was another show that he was on in North Carolina, and Nick Dinsmore was there. And Ace Montana went and had his match, came back and asked Nick Dinsmore what he thought, if he saw it. And Dinsmore told him, I'm not sure if he was joking or if he was serious, told him he should burn his boots. And Ace Montana just like completely disagreed with him. He was like, whatever, man. I thought it was sweet. And like just kept on fucking keeping on. Yeah, Ace Montana is an individual, man, like for sure.
You got to realize now I'm going to be looking up this dude's shit left and right, because you got to understand, I love a fucking freak show, and like I love when a freak show is like in my grasp. Like, I need to be part of it. So I'm going to be looking this motherfucker up ASAP. Well, Chris Horrorshow, it has been an absolute blast getting to chat you up on this podcast. You mentioned it earlier. We've got the Misfits connection. We got music connection. But just in general, man, you've always been just a fucking real motherfucker. Just a good dude, a fellow anti-fascist, a fellow anti-racist, which oddly enough is somewhat of a rarity in pro wrestling. Go fucking figure.
So bizarre.
But, yeah, right? But it just, again, it's great to catch up with you. Great to hear about your, ongoings or early goings in pro wrestling. And, of course, great to hear about Ace Montana, because this is now going to be my obsession for fucking ever. So thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
He's great. He's like a cryptid in pro wrestling, man. People want to hunt him down like a Mothman.
We got so deep into that conversation that I forgot to ask him to hype his social media. So if you want to follow Chris on Twitter, you can go ahead and do that. He's still going by his old handle at @ThatOldJukeJoint. And then on Instagram, you can check him out at Chris_Horrorshow. Well, before we get out of here, you should go ahead and give us a follow on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at @year1pod. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel on your preferred podcasting app and leave a review. Shout out to Heroes for the Music. You can check them out on Spotify. Shout out to Joanna Robinson for all the artwork and design. Julie Chan on all social media. Shout out to the Funkenstein Wrestling Superstore for sponsoring the show, located at the Englishtown Flea Market in Englishtown, New Jersey, and on eBay. Plus, now they've got a brand new website with all their stuff up there. Make sure to check them out and give their Facebook page a like for all your wrestling merch needs. Well, that'll be it for this episode of the Year One Wrestling Podcast. I'm Logan Black telling you, be awesome to each other. Peace and love.